morning and welcome to World News, coming to live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. And we begin with a breaking story from the United States. Two Israeli embassy staff members were shot dead outside a Jewish museum in downtown Washington, D.C. The shooting happened at 9 p.m. local time. According to the Metropolitan Police Department, the suspect, Elias Rodriguez, 30 years old, of Chicago, was seen pacing outside the museum before opening fire on a group of four, killing the couple as a result. According to U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, the attack appears targeted. The case is being worked on by both local police and the FBI. We'll provide you with more information as the story develops. Local Washington police are indicating that after his arrest, the suspect in the shooting implied that he indeed committed the crime and that it was politically motivated.
We believe the shooting was committed by a single suspect who is now in custody. Prior to the shooting, the suspect was observed pacing back and forth outside of the museum. He approached a group of four people, produced a handgun, and opened fire, striking both of our decedents. After the shooting, the suspect then entered the museum and was detained by event security. Once in handcuffs, the suspect identified where he discarded the weapon, and that weapon has been recovered, and he implied that he committed the offense. The suspect chanted, "Free, free Palestine," while in custody.
And moving to Poland, a Russian shadow fleet vessel under international sanctions was seen making suspicious movements near underwater cables between Poland and Sweden on Wednesday, prompting an intervention from the Polish Navy. The so-called shadow fleet has been essential for Russia's war effort, enabling it to evade sanctions.
As months go by, more and more disruptions linked to Russian vessels are being reported in the Baltic Sea.
A Russian ship from the so-called shadow fleet covered by sanctions was acting suspiciously near a power cable connecting Poland with Sweden. After an effective intervention from our military, the ship departed for a Russian port. The Polish vessel ORP Heweliusz is currently heading to the scene of the incident.
This time, like many times before, the target of the perceived sabotage were undersea cables.
The incident did not happen in Polish territorial waters, but took place just above undersea cables owned by Poland's state power transmission operator. Relevant officers immediately issued orders to follow pre-established procedures, including launching patrol flights and deterrence efforts.
The country's defense minister also said that the Polish Navy, as well as other defense forces, will convene for a meeting on Thursday at the Naval Operations Center in Gdynia's Polish Navy port, with Prime Minister Tusk in attendance, to discuss the security situation in the Baltic Sea. Despite a plethora of international sanctions, these ships continue to haul Russian energy products, namely oil, across seas to the farthest corners of the earth. This, however, doesn't discourage the EU from putting more limitations on these ships in their sanctions packages.
They include, for example, many more shadow fleet ships. If I remember correctly, it's 189. So a big number of ships being used by Russia to transport crude oil.
By making the ships uninsured and obscuring their ownership, as well as the origin of their cargo, Russia continues to export its oil abroad, safe from the gaze of meddlesome sanctions officers. Economic benefits are far from the only thing these rust-covered hunks of metal are used for by Russia, however, as they make for perfect saboteurs. Over the course of the last 3 years, since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the number of underwater infrastructure disruptions in the Baltic Sea linked to these vessels has become staggering. At least 6 sabotage cases have been reported since 2022. Since 2023, 11 undersea cables in the Baltic have been damaged.
The Baltic is currently the most dangerous sea in the world. Even if we assume that incidents of cable or pipeline breaks are accidents, there are still too many of them.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said that these sorts of provocations from Russia will be met with decisive action from Poland and the whole of NATO, as the Baltic Sea is a key basin for the alliance's trade routes and eastern flank security. For TVP World, Franciszek Pilis.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk will be at the Naval Operations Center in Gdynia today for a special press conference on the matter. Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski stated that most NATO members favor inviting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the upcoming summit in The Hague. His support comes amid reports that US President Donald Trump aims to sideline Zelenskyy, a claim the White House has denied. Angela Skujins reports from Brussels.
Poland's top diplomat Radosław Sikorski expressed optimism that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy will attend the high-level NATO summer summit scheduled at The Hague next month. It comes amid consternation that the invitation has been lost in the post or may not arrive at all. If Zelenskyy attends these talks in the Netherlands, scheduled for the 24th to the 25th of June, it would be his third over the consecutive years since he formally lodged Kyiv's application to join the 32-member-strong alliance since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Let's take a listen to what Minister Sikorski had to say in the Belgian capital on Tuesday.
We had a discussion on this at the informal NATO ministerial in Antalya in Turkey, and the great majority of member states spoke up in favor of inviting President Zelenskyy.
However, this optimism from Mr. Sikorski runs in stark contrast to media reports which suggest that US President Donald Trump may not extend this invitation to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and that he may even be sidelined from those main plenary talks. It's important to note that the White House has stridently denied this, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio stating that this is not the intention of the US. While much of this invite list is under a shroud of secrecy, for now we can expect that agenda to tackle three major points. The first is strategic autonomy, ensuring those 32 allies have enough military capabilities and the industrial backing to ensure that if a threat does attack them in the next couple of years, that they are prepared to defend themselves and draw on their own war chest. The next is Baltic security, so really addressing those hybrid threats, those cable cutting exercises that are ongoing in those areas, particularly near Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. And the third being the most important, ramping up that defence spending target. Mark Rutte stated on Tuesday he expects the figure to be increased to at least 3%, with a potential 1.5% of military spending on infrastructure added on top. And while we wait for that invite list to be firmed up, we can only hope that Zelenskyy RSVPs with a yes. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
It is very likely that technical-level talks between Russia and Ukraine will take place next week, Finnish President Alexander Stubb said on Wednesday. He added that this would be the highest possible level of talks. Stubb further shared that the venue for the talks could be the Vatican. On Tuesday, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said that Pope Leo XIV confirmed to her that he was willing to make the Vatican available for Ukraine peace talks. Amid speculation that the United States might be withdrawing from the mediation process and leaving the peace negotiations to Russia and Ukraine, Stubb also stated that the US has not abandoned its role as a mediator. Moreover, he asserted that there are now more mediators, including Europe. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated yet again that there are no military solutions to the conflict in Ukraine and only negotiations can end the war. During a hearing at the US Senate, Rubio went on to say that Washington expects a peace proposal from Russia in the next few days.
The president's goal is to end it. In order to end this war has no military solution. It will not. This war will end at some point in a negotiated settlement. And the question is, when does that happen? The sooner it happens, the less people will die, the less destruction there's going to be. It has to be a negotiated settlement to a peace that is sustainable, not a peace that lasts for 3 years and then restarts another war. In order to get to that peace, in order to get to that negotiation, you have to be able to talk to both sides. And both sides are going to have to make concessions. We hope we can have a peace deal. Again, it's difficult. The Russians are supposed to produce a document or a memorandum of peace, as they've called it, in the next few days that will outline what they will require for a ceasefire that could then lead to a broader negotiation and then a final settlement. And I think we'll learn a lot from what that memorandum of peace contains. If it's reasonable, then I think we've made progress. If it's not, then I think we're not any closer here, and the president will have options available to him.
During his nightly address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy reported that Kyiv is preparing for a prisoner exchange. He also added that he spoke with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk about Ukraine's EU accession process.
We are thoroughly preparing for the negotiation process regarding Ukraine's EU accession. On our side, everything is ready to make the first steps. I also spoke about this with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Poland currently holds the EU presidency, and it's important that this be a productive term. I also spoke with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. We discussed possible formats for meetings and joint efforts. Together, we are strengthening diplomacy. And one more essential point. We are preparing for a prisoner exchange. Practically every day I receive updates. We must bring all our people home, no exceptions. We verify information on every name. We are doing everything we possibly can, truly doing our utmost. Glory to Ukraine.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived in Hungary's capital Budapest on Wednesday to attend an informal summit of the Organization of Turkic States and hold bilateral talks with participating leaders. The theme of the summit is meeting point of East and West.
Erdogan was welcomed by the Hungarian Prime Minister ahead of the summit, the theme of which was meeting point of East and West. According to Turkey's communications directorate, the meeting was intended to enhance the group's institutional framework. Turkey is a member of the OTS along with Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, while the summit's host country, Hungary, is an observer.
A monument to murdered Polish prisoners of war at the Midnight War Cemetery in Russia was vandalized, according to Poland's Foreign Ministry. In the act, the Virtuti Militari Cross and the 1939 Defensive War Cross were removed from the tombstone.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski asserted that the act was done on the orders of the Russian state, adding that it constitutes an unacceptable attempt by Russia to rewrite history. The ministry informed on Wednesday that it demanded the Russian side immediately restore the Midnight War Cemetery to its original condition. At a briefing in Brussels on Wednesday, Sikorski announced that an appropriate note would be sent to the Russian side.
Unfortunately, our monument to the murdered Polish prisoners of war in Mednoje was vandalized. The Virtuti Militari Cross and the 1939 Defensive War Cross were removed from the tombstone. This was not done by vandals. It was done by the authorities of the cemetery complex on the orders of the local Tver prosecutor's office, and therefore on the orders of the Russian state. I want to declare to you that we will defend these crosses, because we do not agree to Russian historical lies.
Poland is reportedly looking to invest in 788 additional missiles for the Patriot air defense system. The potential sale, which still hasn't been finalized, is valued at around $5.8 billion. According to a report from Defense 24, which first broke the news, the Journal of the House of Representatives had a mention of an offer to buy said missiles by the Polish government made on May 19th. Combined with Warsaw's previous acquisition of 4 batteries of Patriot air defense system in 2017, the full price of Poland's order comes to around $16.3 billion. According to U.S. law, the Congress has 30 days since the date of the order to examine its inventory and potentially veto the purchase. The missiles that Poland ordered are used for shooting down short-range tactical ballistic missiles, as well as cruise missiles and aircraft. And now time for some sports news. Tottenham Hotspur emerged victorious in this year's Europa League final in Bilbao. In the final, the London club defeated Manchester United 1-0 and won the €8.6 million prize and a spot in next year's UEFA Champions League. Tottenham Hotspur salvaged their season to claim the club's first trophy since their League Cup victory in 2008. The game was won by just 1 goal when, before the break, Tottenham's Brennan Johnson and Manchester United's Luke Shaw bundled the ball into the net. The final marks the first continental trophy won by the club from North London since 1984. The Europa League victory also vindicated Tottenham's manager, Ange, who claimed he, quote, always wins a trophy in his second year coaching a club. And with this, we conclude our news bulletin. Thank you for watching. World Talks with Jonas Rybinski coming up next.